Okay, let's be real for a second. Have you ever finished a massive open world game, put the controller down, and thought, well, I guess that was something? You know the feeling. You cleared every icon off the map, did the exact same bandit camp 17 times in a row, and your reward was basically a digital pat on the head. Not gonna lie though, that's been the standard for so long that we kind of accepted it. But then something comes along that quietly resets the bar, and suddenly everything else feels a little dated. That's what Crimson Desert is doing right now, and honestly, it's causing some real trouble for other open world games. So, what's the actual problem here? The title might sound like clickbait, but it's not about Crimson Desert failing. It's actually the opposite. The problem is that once you spend serious time in Pywell, going back to your usual map clearing checklist games feels off. It's like going from 4K back to standard definition. Other open world titles don't look broken, but they start to feel limited, scripted, and predictable in comparison. So yeah, the bar didn't just get raised, it got yeeted into another dimension. And again, most open world games we have right now treat exploration like a grocery list. You've got map markers for everything, question marks for points of interest, quest markers directing your every step, and side content that repeats so much you could do it in your sleep. Seriously, how many enemy camps with the exact same layout have we cleared at this point? It's fine for a while, but the illusion wears thin. Crimson Desert does things differently, and that's where the problem starts for everyone else. Events just happen without the game announcing them first. You'll be wandering through a forest and suddenly stumble upon a faction skirmish or a random traveler who actually has something interesting to say. NPCs have daily routines, trade routes shift depending on who controls which territory, and the world doesn't feel like it's waiting around for you to show up. On top of that, Pearl Abyss emphasized that sheer size isn't the point. The map is enormous, easily twice the size of Skyrim and bigger than Red Dead Redemption 2. But what actually matters is that Pywell is packed with dense activities and dynamic systems instead of empty space. The thing is, other games start to feel like systems when you compare them to this. Crimson Desert feels like an actual place. Not a theme park designed to keep you busy, but a living, breathing continent that reacts to what you do. Now let's talk about freedom, because Crimson Desert doesn't just give you options, it lets you break the intended path in ways most devs would probably panic over. A good example is the combat system. There's no single correct way to win a fight. You can swap between sword and shield, spears, great swords, or even dual-wield short swords on the fly. Plus you've got unarmed strikes, grapples, wrestling moves like suplexes, and you can even use the environment against enemies, like kicking them off cliffs or using trees as slingshots. And the best part is, if you see something and think, I wonder if I can climb that, chances are, yeah, you can. The parkour system lets you scale cliffs, buildings, and even large enemies. Flip this around for a second. Most open world games control their pacing like a strict parent. They want you to follow a specific route, experience set pieces in a specific order, and never stray too far off the golden path. But Crimson Desert basically shrugs and says, do whatever, see what happens. The Dishonored director Dinga Bakaba pointed out something interesting too. He said most open world games front load the magic and then slowly reveal the repetition underneath. Crimson Desert does the opposite. It starts with the systems front and center, and the magic kicks in later after you've accepted the rules. So what happens when you get used to that level of emergent freedom? Other games feel restrictive. You start noticing the invisible walls, the scripted sequences, the moments where the game grabs the wheel because it's afraid you'll break something. And honestly, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And here's the thing, Crimson Desert doesn't keep its mechanics in neat little boxes. Most open-world games treat combat traversal and world interaction like they belong in separate rooms. You fight in combat mode, you explore in traversal mode, and the two rarely mix. That's not how Pywell works. The systems constantly overlap and crash into each other in ways that create unpredictable outcomes. Picture this. You're riding your bear mount through a field, which is already wild, because when's the last time you rode a bear in an open-world game? Suddenly you get ambushed, so now you're doing mounted combat while dodging arrows and trying not to crash into a tree. And because the faction system is dynamic, that skirmish might actually affect who controls that territory moving forward. Small actions can lead to bigger consequences, not because the game scripted it, but because the systems are designed to interact naturally. Compare that to typical design. In most games, you clear a bandit camp and it stays cleared forever. NPCs don't remember anything. The world resets as soon as you walk away. But in Crimson Desert, towns can recover after attacks, trade routes can close based on your choices, and new characters can appear in locations depending on what you've done. Meanwhile, other open-world games feel segmented, like each mechanic is a mini-game instead of part of a larger whole. And because of that, Crimson Desert feels unpredictable in the best way. Every session has the potential to go completely off the rails, and that's something most open-world games are too scared to allow. And here's where things get even more interesting, and also where a lot of players might bounce off. Crimson Desert doesn't rush to impress you. Most open-world games front-load their best moments in the first few hours. They throw explosions, set pieces, and epic reveals at you immediately because they're terrified you'll get bored and refund the game. Not this one. What's wild is that the first several hours can actually feel rough. The learning curve is steep, the control scheme takes getting used to, and the story doesn't immediately grab you by the throat. One early player impression mentioned spending an embarrassingly long time fumbling around in the dark because they couldn't figure out how to pull out their lantern. That's not the kind of experience most AAA games are aiming for. But the thing is, after you push through that initial friction, the game slowly starts to reveal its depth. Around the 8 to 10 hour mark, everything starts clicking. The combat flows, the traversal feels second nature, and suddenly you realize you're completely hooked. And in addition to what the director of Arcane said, he noted that Crimson Desert starts with the board and the rulebook front and center, but after a while, immersion takes over and the magic kicks in. So why is Crimson Desert genuinely bad news for other open-world games? Not because it's perfect, but because it changes what players expect. Once you've experienced a world where things happen organically, where systems interact instead of staying separate, and where freedom means actually breaking the intended path, going back to scripted experiences feels like a downgrade. The problem is that not every studio can build this kind of system-heavy world. It requires time, serious budget, and a willingness to take risks. Pearl Abyss has been working on this for over 6 years. Most publishers aren't going to greenlight that kind of timeline. Plus, the game's technical demands are no joke. The PC version needs serious hardware to run smoothly, and console performance has its share of issues. So smaller studios with tighter budgets, they can't compete on this level. But players might start expecting this level of depth anyway. What's more, simpler open-world designs could start feeling outdated faster. The kind of map icon checklist games that dominated the last generation might not cut it anymore when players have experienced something more dynamic. Safe design choices become more noticeable. The padding, the repetitive side quests, the feeling that the world exists solely for the player instead of living on its own terms. All of that stands out more when you've seen an alternative. That said, Crimson Desert has already sold over 4 million copies despite a rocky launch. The reception has improved significantly too, with Steam reviews climbing from mixed to very positive after patches addressed major complaints. So the audience is clearly hungry for this kind of experience. The message to other developers is loud and clear: step up your open-world game because players are starting to notice the difference. And before we wrap up, I gotta be fair here. This kind of design isn't for everyone, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Some players actually prefer structure. They like knowing exactly where to go, what to do, and how long something will take. Not everyone has the time or patience for a game that says, yeah, just wander around and see what happens. And Crimson Desert can definitely feel overwhelming or unclear at times. The inventory system is confusing, quest items stick around after you finish the task, and the storage options are limited. The story also isn't winning any awards. One early impression described it as falling well short of games like The Witcher 3, and performance issues on console, like environmental pop-in and screen tearing, are definitely noticeable without VRR enabled. So it's not perfect, not even close. But here's the thing, even with those flaws, Crimson Desert still does enough right that other open-world games have to pay attention. It doesn't have to replace the genre, it just has to change how we look at it. So that's the whole thing. Crimson Desert might not be the game that kills Rockstar game-style open worlds or makes every other RPG obsolete. That was never the point. What it does is shift expectations. Once you've played something where the world actually feels alive, where exploration isn't just checking boxes off a map, and where the systems actually talk to each other, it's hard to go back. Other open world games aren't necessarily bad now, they just feel like they're from a different era, and that's the real problem. Once expectations change, there's no easy way back.